This is History's Heroes Heard, the channel where we tell interesting and inspiring stories about history's forgotten heroes. At the beginning of the First World War, armies were still adapting to modern combat. Technology had changed warfare with improvements in firearms, artillery, and transportation. World War I was the first time much of this technology had been put to use on a large scale. As a result, there was a learning curve for the armies as they adapted to changing tactics. The Battle of Halen was one of these learning opportunities for the Germans. It was one of the last great cavalry charges in modern combat and resulted in an embarrassing defeat for the Germans. Its outcome was driven by brave and intelligent Belgian officers that were willing to risk trying new things. In August of 1914, German troops were moving through Belgium in order to circumvent French defenses. The Belgian army responded to this incursion. Halen was a small market town along the principal axis of advance of the German Imperial Army. At Halen, there are a number of bridges across the rivers Gette and Velp. The village is also transected by the Grootebaan, the main road, which connects Hasselt and Diest, two larger Belgian towns. At the start of the war, there were not many bridges in the region, making those at Halen tactically important. Due to the resistance around Liège, the Gette River drew the attention of the Germans. If their army could push through somewhere between the towns of Diest and Sint-Truiden, the road to Brussels would lay open, driving a wedge between the Belgian army divisions to the north and to the south. A week after the invasion of Belgium by the Germans, the Belgian army chose this location to deal a stopping blow to the advancing enemy in an attempt to buy time to complete an orderly retreat towards the west. Since the outbreak of the war, General Leon de Witte, leader of the newly formed Belgian Cavalry Division, had been assigned reconnaissance tasks in the provinces of Liège and Limburg, and his cavalry division was also responsible for the defense of the long and vulnerable east flank of the Belgian army. On 11 August, there was an exchange of fire between groups of scouts near the river Halbach at Herk de Stade and at the bridge across the Gette at Halen. It became clear, while the battle for the fortifications around Liège was still going on, that the cavalry corps from General Georg von der Marwitz would be deployed near Halen to cross the river Gette and push through in the direction of Brussels as quickly as possible. To block the German advance, the cavalry division, commanded by General de Witt, was sent to guard the bridge. At this time, the cavalry division consisted of horse-mounted lancers and bicycle-mounted carabiner cyclists. On the night of August 11, de Witt and his staff decided that on the following day, lancers and scouts would fight dismounted. Rather than ride their horses into battle, they would instead keep the horses safe out of fire and take defensive positions on foot. This was an attempt to negate the Germans' numerical advantage and superior use of machine guns. The deviation from the old battle traditions was the inspiration of two young officers, Commander Tasnier and Lieutenant von Overstraten. Out of communication intercepts, the Belgian HQ discovered that the Germans were heading in force towards de Witt's position and sent the 4th Infantry Brigade during the early morning hours of August 12 to reinforce the cavalry division. The majority of the Belgian troops had taken position near and to the south of the Iserwinningschauvet, a local farmhouse. Only one company of carabiner cyclists, approximately 150 men, guarded the bridge across the Gette. The fighting erupted around 8 o'clock in the morning on August 12, when a German scouting party advancing from Herk de Stade came under fire from the Belgians. About 200 Belgian troopers attempted to set up a fortified position in the old brewery at Halen, but were driven out of the building when the Germans brought up their field artillery. Soon the company of carabiner cyclists guarding the bridge were driven back. After the defeat of the cyclists, the Belgian engineers attempted to blow the bridge over the Gette, but the structure only partly collapsed. This left the Germans an opportunity to send a force of some 1,000 troops across the bridge and into the center of Halen. The German command was euphoric when informed that the important bridge had been taken quickly and almost undamaged. The Belgian central defense line was positioned west of Halen in the landscape which obstructed the attackers' view. The relatively easy capture of Halen had made the Germans confident of an easy victory. The overconfidence led to numerous ill-conceived attempts to capture the Belgian position with saber and lance. The German cavalry charged on the Belgian position, only to be stopped by small arms fire. They made numerous attempts to charge and overwhelm the defenders but suffered significant casualties and were pushed back by the dug-in Belgians. The German attacks on the Belgian guns positioned on the hill at Mettenberg were failures, and they were unable immediately to advance to the Eiserwinning farm. The German infantry, on the other hand, was able to have much better success. Backed by their artillery near Halen Station in the village of Velpen, the German infantry attacked the farm and eventually overwhelmed the defenders. At this point, things were looking grim for the Belgians. The breakthrough on the eastern flank of the Belgian army now seemed assured, and King Albert was advised to leave Leuven immediately. Germans were taking heavy casualties, but they were progressing and slowly overrunning the Belgian position. Belgian troops were steadily losing ground, and the situation seemed hopeless. Then around 2 p.m. on August 12th, Belgian reinforcements started to arrive. The first soldier of the mixed brigade appeared on the battlefield after a 17-kilometer, or 11-mile, march from Tienen. Their artillery was put in position on the Molenberg Windmill Hill and in the center of the village of Lochsbergen. Brigade machine gun sections immediately opened fire on the Germans. Support also came from the nearby town of Deist. Then, around 5 p.m., Colonel Dujardin assembled a combat unit that drove from Deist to Zelk in 6 cars. The 4th Regiment of Mounted Chasseurs succeeded with a few men in silencing the German artillery along the road to Halen. Around 7 p.m., Eiserwinning Farm was captured, and De Witt then ordered a counterattack on Velpen and Halen to push the enemy back to the right bank of the river Gette. Unlike the cavalry division, the 4th Mixed Brigade was mainly composed of conscripts. It lacked officers to lead the men properly. The inexperienced infantry blindly attacked towards the village of Velp, where German machine gunners had taken cover in a number of houses and farms. The Mixed Brigade was repulsed and the Germans held their position. There was a lull at dusk. When impressed by the Belgian resistance and after limited territorial gain and the arrival of Belgian reinforcements, the Germans broke off their attack and retreated. At 11 p.m., a telegram from General De Witt reached King Albert's headquarters at Leuven. The German troops were repelled at Halen, with enormous losses in men and horses. De Witt repulsed the initial German cavalry attacks by ordering his men to dismount and meet the attack with massed rifle fire, which succeeded in inflicting significant casualties upon the Germans. It also slowed down the German advance enough to give time for reinforcements to arrive. The battle demonstrated the advent of the irrelevance of mounted cavalry charges on the battlefield. Though it should be noted, the mounted cavalry was still crucial from a transportation aspect for the Belgians. They were able to arrive quickly and fortify the area. The Germans suffered 150 dead, 600 wounded, and some 200 to 300 prisoners with the loss of approximately 400 horses. The Belgians counted 160 dead, and some 320 wounded. Furthermore, the Germans learned that the days of traditional cavalry actions were over. Although this battle was a Belgian victory, it had little long-term strategic effect, and the Germans captured most of Belgium over the next 2 months. As an analogy to the Battle of the Golden Spurs, the battle was nicknamed the Battle of the Silver Helmets, for the many silvered helmets left behind by the German cuirassiers on the battlefield. For the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the First World War, 44 helmets in concrete were constructed and placed in the town of Halen near the battlefield to symbolize the German occupation of the area during the war. Each helmet represents one of the towns in Limburg. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more interesting and inspiring stories.